anyone was counting, hopefully it wasn't my mistake, but that should have been 85. That should have been 85 rings for 85 years for DT. The time is 1, 2, 3, 4. 12:34. Every day, 12:34 was a special time for DT. You see, every farmer's favorite reporter, Orion Samuelson, would deliver the WGN Farm and Business Report at 12:34. This was a ritual for DT. 12:34 was a time to conduct a farmer's version of meditation, listening to the booming voice of Orion, bringing the big world to the small farmer. DT would mentally process the ebb and flow of the markets, plotting his next move, sometimes mentally chastising himself for a missed market peak, and sometimes grinning from a perfect market sale, but always respecting the retrospective 2020 vision. 1, 2, 3, 4 was DT's daily center, a time to reflect on his mental calculation of, if it's going to be, it's up to me. David Neil Triebold, DT, 85, passed away after a brief illness on August 14, 2023. DT lived and died in the comfort and beauty of the hilltop home he built and decorated on Engle Road here in Whitewater. David was born in Illinois on April 21st, 1938, to Frederick and Mildred Triebold, and was the youngest of 7 children. The Triebold family moved to Whitewater in 1949, purchasing the Engle Road farm from Leslie Engle, the man who would eventually become DT's father-in-law. David enlisted in the Armed National Guard, proudly serving until his honorable discharge in September 1962. He married Laura Millis Engle, Lolly, on October 26, 1963. Jointly, DT and Lolly purchased the family farm, subsequently adding surrounding farms to their acreage. Together, they raised 3 daughters, Kathleen, Chris, and Carla. David was a farmer his entire life. He began as a dairy farmer, but as that discipline began to take a toll on his body, he transitioned into cash crop farming, raising corn and soybeans. With the unproductive land, he developed subdivisions with the idea that their borders be left natural, encouraging the formation of wildlife bridges. In addition to farming, he was a master at buying houses, gutting them, remodeling them, and renting them out. He was a jack of all trades and a master of many. DT taught his 3 girls many life lessons, molding them into strong, independent women, of which he was very proud. He encouraged and supported his daughter's obsession with horses, which truly, in his mind, was just a way to keep them close to home and out away from trouble. It was a successful lesson. It was also important to him that each of the three knew how to change a tire, how to change their own oil, whether it was a car, truck, or tractor, how to stack a straight mow of hay, how to drive any piece of equipment on the farm, how to nickel and dime a starter out of a Case 400 tractor, how to turn a wrench without busting a knuckle while tearing the engine out of a Case 2470 TK, how to pick rocks while chugging warm beer. Now I couldn't do that. How to swim, how to work the soil, plant seeds, harvest the bounty, and market the crop. How to cook a mean beef tenderloin, how to enjoy a Friday night fish fry with friends and family, how to dance a polka, and finally, how to smile and say thank you. During his life, David was known as an impulsive risk taker as well as an independent thinker. When he was youth, he was told by his mother to stop using the new welder and come for supper. His response was, "Catch me if you can." When told he couldn't do something, his response was, "Watch me." When given directions to take a right turn or a Ralphie, he'd take a left or a Louis. His life's mantras were, "If it's going to be, it's up to me." Do you know where to find sympathy? It's in the dictionary between shh and syphilis. And when discussing a project or dream, he'd say, "Make history of it." David and Laura indulged in their love of adventure and travel, both domestically and internationally. Their destinations included most of the 50 states, the Caribbean, Central America, Canada, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, China, Japan, Thailand, and Russia. For the past 20 years, Torremolinos, Spain became a favorite wintertime destination. DT had a gift for striking up a conversation with anyone, anywhere, sparking friendships with people from around the world. Many new lifelong friends were invited to visit and share his home, where he would introduce them to the varied and unique treasures which he obsessively collected from around the globe. DT enjoying reliving the stories of how he haggled and bartered for these objects. He was an anomaly who loved shopping. David was preceded in death by his wife Laura in 2021. His parents, his sisters, Dorothy, Eileen, and Shirley, his brothers Fritz and Richard. He is survived by his three daughters, Kathleen with Jeff Markham, Christine with Phil Welter, and Carla with Jeff Mortera. Grandchildren JJ with Jess Markham, Josie with Wyatt Bennett, Christina, Alexandra, Kira, and Andrew Mortera. Brother Donald Triebold, as well as many other cherished family members and friends.
Gotta get myself organized. Can you hear me okay? No? Turn it on. Gotta get those. Thank you all for coming to celebrate our dad's life. I'm sorry, I'm going to pretty much read it because it's easier for me. 2 years ago, we also did a celebration and honored our mom, Laura's life. Our parents had 3 daughters, Kathleen, Christine, and Carla. I'm Chris, the middle one. There is so much to say about our dad, and he is 85 years, that it's hard to know where to begin. Dad would want me to slash about 2/3 of the words here, but too bad, so sad, Dad, because I think I'm going to take my time. And it's going to be a bit, dear people. I guess I'll begin by saying that growing up with our dad made for a unique, one-of-a-kind life because our dad was a unique, fascinating person. As a teen with our mom, he helped shape us from 3 tomboys into 3 strong, independent women. So strong that it became a joke where he would find himself apologizing and saying, "I'm sorry," to our husbands. We 3 carry many traits from him, so by the end of this you may just understand why he was constantly apologizing to them. Here's a peek into what it was like growing up with Dad, melding his life into ours. I seem to find myself describing our dad as having a uniquely wired brain, that being one of an impulsive, inventive risk-taker who had trouble taking no for an answer. One story where that became evident was in his teen years when he acquired his first welder. When Dad was fascinated by the welder and how it functioned and what he could do with it, his mother, Mildred, was a very structured, strict woman, and in her eyes, when it was time for supper, it was time for supper. Everyone in the family was expected to be cleaned up and sitting at the dining room table at a specific time. But Dad, on this day, and in his infinite wisdom, decided that he was going to be the only one not going to be sitting at that table. He was going to be using the welder come hell or high water. He had no money to buy welding rods, so he improvised by using the generous supply of coat hangers from his mother's closet. They'd do, and they did. He practices welding right through supper. When Mildred came looking for him, his response was, "Catch me if you can." Dad was a great welder. Without any formal training, he understood the physics and mathematics in fixing a broken piece of equipment just by looking at it. His fixes have lasted a lifetime. Welding is one skill from him that I regret not learning more about how to do. Dad was a farmer. He found it rewarding to know that he had accomplished something by the end of every day. He enjoyed nurturing the soil, planting the seed, watching it grow, helping it along, harvesting the bounty, and sending it off to market. Farming fed his every side of how he was put together. His independent side, his impulsive side, his problem-solving side, his inquisitive side, his obsessive side, his worker side, and his risk-taker side. He found it humorous to be the first in the neighborhood to get his tractor and planter out of the shed in the spring, even when it was only to park it out in the yard so all of the passing neighbors could see it. He loved to rile them up, even if it was only an illusion and he had no plans of dropping any seeds into the cold ground yet. He just couldn't help himself. By the time each of his daughters reached the age of 12, he had them driving a tractor, doing some kind of field work. The older you got, the bigger and more complicated the task became, until you could run everything on the farm. It always amazed us how Dad could put us out in the field on a task while he was nowhere to be found until your last pass came along, when suddenly he would appear out of nowhere in order to direct you to the next field. In all reality, we thought that we were done for the day. How naive of us. Anyways, how did he know? As it turns out, if we were working in the morning, he knew because he was having coffee with the neighbor and could see us as plain as day through their window. If it was in the evening, it was because he was having a cocktail with the neighbor. Dad was pretty smart and sneaky of a guy in knowing how to keep all of us driving. He purchased each of us a Sony Walkman radio headset, and that bought him a lot more hours of driving. He knew that keeping us working kept us out of trouble. Another trick he had up his sleeve to keep us home on the farm was to encourage our horsey obsession. That trick we didn't seem to mind at all. Dad could motivate us to farm like no one else's business. When it came time to pick rocks out in the field, he allowed all of us a turn at driving the old Idaho backhoe. Along with the gallon jug of beer, which sat under the seat getting warm sitting on the transfer case, and the promise of a swim in the pool, he had us hooked. Farming was a family affair for us. In the fall, during the harvest, Mom and Kath would be driving combines, while I would be driving the grain truck. while Carla would be running the grain elevator setup. Dad would keep it all flowing. Dad had a unique reward system of payment for us in exchange for our help out on the farm. It was dinners out, shopping sprees, hotel stays, month-long vacations in the Caribbean. He was so very proud of his family and of his farming profession that he voiced it to the world. Dad could have a persuasive nature, especially in getting others to help join in the helping with the workload. When our Uncle Joe, his city slicker brother-in-law from New York City, would arrive for the summer, Dad would put him to work. One time he told Uncle Joe that Johnny's pen needed to be pitchforked out by hand. Johnny was the bull, and the pen was 4 feet deep. Dad said that everything would be just fine. Nothing to worry about. Just go in there. And everything was just fine. Until that moment that it wasn't. And Johnny had decided to pin Uncle Joe in the corner with the pitchfork crossways against his chest, with no escape. All poor Uncle Joe could do was holler, "Davy!" When Dad arrived, he just calmly stated, "Now, Johnny, get back." And that was the end of that. Unfortunately, that was only one of the many predicaments here on the farm that poor Uncle Joe found himself in at Dad's expense. Yet he always came back yearly for more. A glutton for punishment, Dad would say. Uncle Joe wasn't the only city slicker that found themselves coming to visit the farm to find themselves put to work. There was the Triebold Chicago cousins and their friends, the foreign exchange students, the neighborhood kids, the New York City Yonkers youth judo team. Well, basically anyone that set foot on the property got put to work and farm educated. As a tween, I had one, let's count that again, one and only one slumber party with my friends here on the farm. Why only one, you wonder? That's because my slumber party entertainment consisted of Dad persuading everybody to come outside and pick rocks in the field. I can still envision it, me mortified, and my friends thinking it was the greatest thing in the world. It's interesting how fondly everyone speaks about their experiences on the farm. To them, it was never work. It was rewarding, goal-oriented fun where they felt accomplished and productive at the end of the day. Dad was the reason for that. Dad was an inquisitive, world-traveling, obsessive, bartering, haggling accumulator of unique treasures from around the world. Just look around you. Everything here on this property and in this house is all him. All of his visions and all of the things he just had to have. The cross from France, the garden statues from Thailand, the bells from around the U.S. And it goes on and on from there. He stopped at every antique store he came across. He pulled into any wayward place that looked interesting along the side of the road. He scoured the internet. All in all, looking for his treasures. He'd get on some kind of a kick to acquire something for his collection, and he just couldn't let it go. From his Pecherays, to his Boulique china, to his marionettes, to his cloisonne, to his Tiffany lamps, to his antique tools, to his antique tractors, to his old toys, to his silk carpets, to his grand pieces of furniture, to his rental houses, to his farmland. The list is endless, but it all meant something to him, and every piece had a story to its acquisition. He took great pride in displaying his stuff. He was an artistic eccentric who built everything himself. His house was his vision. Every limestone rock he hand-cut and placed. He built archways out of rock, a free-hanging balcony library, an in-house pond and waterfall, and a fireplace pit, just to name a few. My earliest recollection that our dad was a collector of stuff was when we were young kids. We were surrounded by his collection of antique clocks. I always wondered why we had all those clocks. And I'm talking a lot of clocks. He said he just had to have them because they were all different and unique and interesting. One Saturday night, the three of us girls decided that we were going to sleep out on the couch surrounded by all those clocks. We meticulously set each and every one of them and wound them all up with their keys. We thought that if they were all functional, they should serve a purpose. And boy, did they serve a purpose. 10 p.m. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, chime, 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 ding, 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 dong, 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 times 10 o'clock hour, times 30 clocks. 10:15 p.m. Ding dong. 10:30 p.m. Ding dong. 10:45 p.m. Ding dong. 11 p.m. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, chime, 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 ding, 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 dong, 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 times the 11 o'clock hour, times 30 clocks. Worst night of sleep of our lives. Lesson learned. Don't set and wind up all the clocks. Surely Dad had a great chuckle over it while soundly sleeping in his bedroom. Sometimes you just need to learn your lesson the hard way so it sticks with you and you don't repeat the same mistakes. He taught us that. Dad was a conversationalist. He could strike up a conversation with anyone, anywhere around the world. On his honeymoon in the early 1960s, while traveling through Germany, he found himself driving down a private security gated road. Dad just went with the flow. When he arrived at the security gate, the guard just waved him through, and in he went. He arrived at the front door and was welcomed by a man who began to give him a tour of the place. As the tour guide began to ask Dad questions, it soon became apparent that my dad did not understand too much about what the guide was talking about. It seems that Dad really didn't know too much about nuclear physics. This, considering Mom and Dad were being given a tour of a nuclear facility. The tour guide had been expecting some American scientists to tour their nuclear facility. Mom and Dad were certainly not them. By the end of the day, Mom and Dad were ensconced at the dinner table at the house of Gert Spanagel and family, the nuclear physicist, scientist, tour guide of the day. From that point on, they maintained a lifelong relationship, visiting each other and hosting each other's families. In 1980, Mom and Dad traveled to Australia. Whenever our parents traveled, they had a habit of looking through the hotel phone book to see if they could find the Triebold name. Lo and behold, in Melbourne, Australia, in a hotel phone book, they found it, they called it, and they decided to meet. When the door swung open, another bald man stood on the other side of it. As it turns out, Dad and Herbert Triebold's grandfathers were brothers in Germany. We were related. Again, a new lifelong relationship was formed. There are endless stories of how Dad's conversational skills led to many new lifelong friends who are always welcome with their families to the Triebold farm. The Triebolds from Australia, the Weirs from New Zealand, the Spanagels from Germany, the Knapmans from Nova Scotia, just to name a few. There's so many others, including Bella and Jorgen from Denmark. Dad enjoyed music, but a singer he was not, even though he tried. The words may not all be correct, but as a child, my remembrance was that he sang these songs to us this way. While strolling through the park one day, in the merry, merry month of May, I was taken by surprise by a pair of roving eyes in the merry, merry month of May. Does your chewing gum lose its flavor on the bedpost overnight? If your mother says don't chew it, do you swallow it for spite? Waltzing Matilda, you'll come a waltzing Matilda with me. Roll out the barrel, we'll have a barrel of fun. Roll out the barrel, we've got the blues on the run. And then there's this little ditty, an anxiety inducer for me on Monday mornings as we were walking to the school bus. School days, good old golden rule days. reading and writing and arithmetic, talk to the teacher with a hickory stick. And this one that he sang to the three of us. Down in the meadow, in an itty-bitty pool, swam three little fishies, and a mama fishy too. And Dad would say it like this. Fim, said the mama fishy, fim if foo can. And they fam, right over the dam. Boop, boop, did-em, dad'em, wad'em, chew. Boop, boop, did-em, dad'em, wad'em, chew. Boop, boop, did-em, dad'em, wad'em, chew. And they fam, right over the dam. Dad was a teacher. Like I've already mentioned, Dad spent a lot of time apologizing to his daughter's husbands for making them into such strongly independent women with a cache of skills that can precipitate an argument, like that which occurs when husbands and wives try working together on a project together. No husband wants to hear the phrase, "My dad taught me to do it this way." Here is just a partial list of some of the examples of our dad's taught skills. Take your foot off the gas and steer straight ahead if you drop a tire off the side of the road. Never jerk the wheel. He taught us how to wire an outlet, how to plumb a sink, set a toilet, shim a door and a window, clear the nozzle of a spray paint can, hang a plumb bob, enjoy a Friday night fish fry and a Sunday night dinner with family, cook a stuffed pork tenderloin, make roulatin, rest a beef tenderloin, stretch a thin strudel dough, and make the thinnest Christmas cutout cookies. He taught us how to polka, how to swim without inhibition, how to swing a hammer, pull a nail, shingle a roof, change our oil, turn a wrench without busting the knuckle, jump a starter with a screwdriver, play the rim of a wine glass with your finger, make a rum and coke, gin and tonic, or brandy and coke, change a tire, break the bead of a tire, and de-rim it. Small bites with the tire irons, people. Pop the clutch to start a tractor. Frame a concrete pad, slope a concrete pad, hand mix the concrete, pour the concrete, and float the concrete. Square up a wagon whilst coming out of the field ditch. Shovel corn and beans. How to double clutch an old international grain truck. How to till, seed, harvest, and market a crop. Split a tractor, pull a motor, rebuild a transmission. How to appreciate fine jewelry. This is all his visions of jewelry I have today, everything he gave me. How to shift the double H stacked shifting pattern on a Case 400. How to put two wrenches together for a more levered torque. How to body surf in the ocean. The list is endless. But in the end, he also how to be successful. Dad had significant sayings and phrases he liked to say during certain situations. Did you see the green flash? Said while watching a sunset. Mythical or not? We don't know. Run get that for me, you've got younger legs. Do you think the rain is going to hurt the rhubarb? He always said that while trying to diffuse a tense conversation. He liked to use old Albert Miller's saying, which was, and that's the mystery of it. Loose lips sink ships. If it's going to be, it's up to me. Paul Harvey's borrowed phrase, and now you know the rest of the story. Make history of it. Shit or get off the pot. Don't be a rabble-rouser. Simple minds, simple pleasures. Watch me, when he was told he couldn't do something. I have a need, while asking for a favor. Don't be a dumb shit, while sticking your head in an automatic veil picker upper while it's still running. You know where to find sympathy. It's in the dictionary between, for kids' ears, it was always shit and syphilis. And as adult ears, it was always sex and syphilis. Well, we all know that I could go on with thoughts and stories of Dad and how he, along with our mom, shaped our lives. The three of us were lucky, and so were all of the other people whose lives they touched. Our dad was one of a kind, and we were so very proud to have had him. We will miss his shit-eating grin, his gentle laughter, his generosity, his cooking, and his guidance with a lifetime wealth of knowledge and skills that he shared with us.
DT touched the lives of many of us, and we would like to give this opportunity for those who would like to share a memory. I know I have one right off the bat that talked to me, and I'm going to deliver the microphone here to him right here. The legendary Pastor Wen. I won't make this leak into my chest.
Yes, hi. My name is Jerry Went, pastor of First English Lutheran Church and also Hart Prairie Church, which is a couple miles south of here. I always dealt with Dave in a very professional way. He would call and he would say something like, "Hey, Rev, there's a coon in the shed." And so I'd go and get the coon. All right? Well, then he'd call and say, "Hey, Rev, I got a daughter, Kathy, who wants to get married. Can you do it in her yard?" "Yeah, sure, I'll do that." So then pretty soon, "Hey, Rev, I got another daughter. I got Chris. She wants to get married." So I married. "And Carla, hey, Rev, would you do that?" "Yeah, sure." So I do that. Well, then, he had 5 kids. He had this one right here. He had Joe. But then, see, I did such a good job with Kathy and Jeff that 20-some years later, I had to do it again with JJ. So a couple years ago, we did JJ. That was on the other side of the house. But anyway, always on a professional way. But there's another story I wanted to tell you about the Triebold Cemetery. Did you know there's a cemetery on this farm? All right. Well, some people know it, some don't. At Hart Prairie Lutheran Church, the people came in 1844. They decided where to build the church in 1850. But in 2 years after they came, there was a pandemic, and there was about 15 people who died. And from some families, there were 3 or 4 members of a family who died. And we have it in the history book, where were they buried? Well, it said on the Triebold farm. So I talked to Dave. "Hey, Dave, there's this thing about the Triebold farm and the cemetery." Yeah, he said, I can show you." "Really?" So I got Pastor Fremming, Larry Fremming, some of you know him, and he and I went out with Dave, and it's about 300 yards right from here. I'm pointing to that flag right now. It's way beyond the flag, right where the tree started. And you know what Dave had? He had a divining rod. You know what a divining rod is? He was holding the rod, and it would wiggle. He said, "Oh, there's one right here." And then it would wiggle, and "Oh, there's one right here, one right there." And he was right. And he said, "There's a rock here with a cross on it. And that rock is still there with a cross on it. Somebody found that rock. You know that. And the cross was kind of like built right into the rock." Well, anyway, I'll never forget that day when Dave helped us with that. But now I'm going to end up with something. I didn't see Dave for the last couple of years. I can't do steps anymore, and there's steps even to get in the wonderful Triebold place. But the last time I was here, Lau was still here, and she was at the very end. And he said, I don't know if he called, "Would you please come up?" He was laying on the bed with Lau. She had like either one or two more days to go. And we had a prayer. But the point is that God gave him the farm, God gave him the daughters, but God gave him Lau. And he was not going to leave her, not for a minute. She was God's gift to him. Well, thank you very much. It was wonderful just to know him. Thank you.
For me, DT was very influential in my life as I became a young man. I learned many skills and character qualities from DT, for which I could talk hours. But I want to share with you one of the most profound memories with DT. I was a 17-year-old high school dropout with only a GED. I was aspiring to pick things up and go to UW Whitewater. I remember it like it was yesterday. Just DT and I were sitting in front of his home on a warm summer night right before our traditional Sunday night dinner, right up in that front area, which we didn't sit very often, but it was kind of a different night. I was discussing my aspirations of going to Whitewater. And DT said to me very simply, if you want to make something of yourself, no one will do it for you. His tone had a level of a combination of a hug of encouragement and a kick in the pants. Those words still ring in my ears. No one will do it for you. Thank you, DT. Anyone else like to share a memory of DT?
Hi, I'm Sonia Narishkin. I actually live on one of the properties that DT used to own down there over on the Glacial Drive. And I didn't know him. I didn't see him hardly at all. But Chris was my veterinarian. And last year at Lola's memorial, Dave got a hold of me, it was awesome. It was an awesome time. Gave me a tour of his garage, went to his house. He showed me all his artwork, described every piece, where he got it, as you said. Showed me how he built that cool little stone room in there with the library, which I love libraries. Anyway, it was just an awesome time, and even though it was brief, I hold that memory, and I was really thankful for that. And the kids are living an awesome legacy, that's all I can say.
I just want to say that I've known the Triebold family since they moved here way back when I was very little. And I got enough memories of Dave and all the family and the girls growing up that I could write a pretty good book. And I probably should have, because it would have been a good one. But I just want to reconfirm to the girls, the grandchildren, how special your lives have been to me through my life and the whole Triebold family. Thank you, David and Laura and all the kids.
So through a lot of these other speeches people give, everybody talks about how he likes to accumulate things. But no one ever mentioned his favorite four-letter word, F-R-E-E. Every Sunday night, it was guaranteed that that word was going to come out. And it didn't matter what it was. I remember trying to start a 400 with him one day, and he got that battery for free, and he wasn't going to waste that battery. Well, the tractor had a decompression valve on it, so he flipped the decompression valve, it spins over faster with a weak battery, you flip the valve back closed, and the tractor will pop right off. So that was his big thing, is how cheap can he get it done?
So when I met Kathleen, DT was so pleased. He had a mechanic to help him fix all of his tractors and all his implements. And so I helped him. He got me my job at Triebold Implement. And when I got ready to ask Kathleen to marry me, DT had a bet going with Kathleen
I was going to ask him before I asked Kathleen for her hand in marriage. And I asked her on Christmas Eve at my parents' place. We left the next morning to go down the Caribbean Islands. And we got down the Caribbean Islands. And she went up to DT and she said, "I won the bet, DT." And he looked at her and he looked at me and she held her hand out. And so, one of the few times that he didn't get his way. But growing up, helping him, they talked about the warm beer on the tractor picking rocks. I got him his first refrigerator with a quarter barrel attached to it, and we went out there and we're picking up rocks, and that gallon jug they talked about was sitting on top of the transmission. Well, at that point in time, DT didn't get off the tractor. He stayed on the old dyno, and he handed the jug off, and the girls took a swig out of it, and I took a swig out of that, and it all came right back out. That beer was about 140 degrees, and I was used to drinking beer that was 40 degrees, not 140. It never made it to the bottom of my belly. But he taught me a lot. All his rental houses, as he got older, couldn't take care of them anymore. He'd say, "Go fix this." And I'd get up there, and I'd call him up. "Dave, how did you wire this house?" "Well, I wired it according to code." "And what code was that, Dave?" "My code." There were wires that in houses, I have light switches that do nothing. I have wires that do nothing. I still have a house. I have no idea how to turn on the outside light. I have flipped every wire, changed switches around. Someplace in the wire, in this walls, there's mystery wires, but nobody has ever got the outside lights to work. But it was wired Dave's way. But he isn't here to tell me how. And when I asked him how, he couldn't remember. He said, "Figure it out." Well, it's still not figured out. That's all.
I have a memory from abroad that someone sent in that I'd like to read quickly here. Hello, friends and family of Dave Triebold. I am writing this on behalf of my mom, Hope Natman, and our family. Mom and Dad met Dave and Laura a number of years ago during their annual winter pilgrimage to Torremolinos, Spain. Over the years, they became very good friends. From Dave and Dad sharing a coffee and brandy at happy hour to Laura accompanying Mom on her walks on the boardwalk, they shared their stories on their lives and their families. On a bright, sunny summer day a number of years ago, while Mom and Dad were picking up to go to our camp at Cow Bay on the Atlantic Ocean, they answered the doorbell at their house in town to find David and Laura standing there. They said that they're in the area, apparently visiting someone in Connecticut, and thought that they would drop in on the Natmans. Mom, who in turn invited the Triebold to join them at camp, panicked a bit, knowing that the guest bed at the camp was only a double. When she mentioned this to Dave and Laura, the response was, "No problem, we like to snuggle." For a number of days, laughs, lobster, and drink were had by the campfire at our little camp by the ocean. On a personal note, while visiting Mom and Dad in Spain with my sister-in-law, Debbie, I saw an example of Dave and Laura's kindness and generosity. Shortly after arriving there on a bus trip to a flea market, my sister-in-law, Debbie, had her wallet stolen, leaving her without cash and without a credit card. The next day, Dad arrived to our room with an unmarked envelope with 300 euros in it from an anonymous donor. I immediately blurted out, "That's Dave and Laura." Dad, who was sworn to secrecy, had a small smirk on his face that told me the answer. After arriving home, I did tell Deb, although after meeting Dave and Laura, she knew herself that these folks were the doers of the kind deed. Years have stopped those wonderful meetings in Spain. I hope Dave, Laura, and Dad are sharing stories and drinking in the warm sun somewhere. Mom resides in an assisted living senior residence nearby, and this weekend, when we go outside to feel that warm summer sun, we will raise a glass of lemonade. Ironically, Mom was allergic to alcohol, and toast Dave Triebold, a dear and loyal friend. We are so blessed. We are so blessed to have known David and Laura. We are saddened by your loss. Our thoughts are with you. Hope Natman, Wanda Natman White, David Natman, and Wayne Natman. And they're from where, Chris? Nova Scotia. Another example of world travelers. And I know we had one more at least. Anyone else? I got Davis. Did you want to come up?
I remember being intrigued by this contraption. The handle's century-old patina called to me like a time machine, like someone from the past wanted to give me a centuries-old message. It was always in easy reach, but I knew it was off limits and thus as far away as the moon. For special occasions, DT would let me, very gently and at the right tempo, turn the handle for all of us to enjoy. This would certainly qualify for one of those special occasions.
I'm as terrified of this thing as he is. You'll all know this one. as the day goes on, feel free to share any other memories you have with the family or friends or whomever else you would care to. So if you could please join Amelia, Kira, and Alexandra in the Lord's Prayer.
Now we just need to do a little business. You can sit if you want. Before we resign to feast and visit, I would like to thank the friends who prepared your food today. Lenny Brickner on the pig, my niece Carrie and her family and friends, my sister-in-law Debbie, my niece Emily Welter. Oh, it's not Welter anymore. Donna and Heidi Sherman, Deb Nays, and my sister Kath on the appetizers and sides. My niece Carrie, Donna and Heidi Sherman, Erna Kyle, Kathy Brockmeyer, and Mary Zordell on desserts. And Donna Amoletti also. And a thank you to Heidi Sherman, who's videoing this memorial today. If you'd like to see this service again or our mom's service from 2021, you can search YouTube for Heidi Sherman's channel, which is Heidi Sherman at Heidi Sherman 15. Or if you search Laura Triebold and following this after she posts David Triebold, if you just put that in the search on your YouTube, on your smart TV, the service will come up. You figure out what to click on. Thank you to, of course, to Joe and Wendy Staller and family from Staller Estate Winery, shameless plug there, who have always been a part of this family. And thank you, Joe, for leading this memorial for us. A big thank you to everyone else who's helped us pull this party together. There's so many of you that helped, and we greatly appreciate it. Now we're going to have a prayer delivered by Pastor Wendt before we have our meal.
Gracious God, your goodness surrounds us more than we know, more than we understand. We thank you for this day when we can give thanks for Dave and Laura and all that they have done. We accept now these gifts of your hand as signs of your love for each one of us. Through Christ our Lord we pray. Amen.